My name is Jenny Chen, and in the restaurant business, success isn't just about fancy ingredients or prime locations. It's about soul. Something my mother-in-law, Margaret Wong, never understood, even as she built Golden Dragon restaurants into a 30-location chain. You started as a waitress, she loved reminding me during family dinners. Don't forget that. I hadn't forgotten. How could I? Those years of serving tables at the original Golden Dragon had taught me everything about the restaurant business, from the front line, where real success or failure is determined. What Margaret never knew was that her son Michael hadn't married just a waitress. I'd been a culinary prodigy, trained in both classical French cuisine and traditional Chinese cooking. But more importantly, I was the granddaughter of Chef James Chen, whose secret recipes had made the original Golden Dragon famous. My grandfather had been Margaret's first chef, back when she had just one small restaurant in San Francisco's Chinatown. His Hong Kong-style seafood dishes drew crowds from across the city. Food critics raved about his mysterious dragon sauce, a recipe he never shared with anyone, except me. Recipes are like children, he told me during our secret cooking lessons in his tiny apartment kitchen. You don't give them to someone just because they have money or power. You wait for someone who will love them, nurture them, help them grow. When he passed away, everyone assumed his recipes died with him. Margaret tried desperately to recreate them, hiring chef after chef. None could capture the magic. What she didn't know was that I had them all, written in my grandfather's careful hand, annotated with his special techniques, hidden away in a secret notebook. I met Michael during my first week as a waitress at Golden Dragon. He was doing restaurant inspections for the family business, wearing an expensive suit that looked out of place in the bustling kitchen. The soup dumplings are better at table 7, I told him, noticing his untouched plate. They're using my grandfather's technique. He looked up, surprised. Later, he told me it wasn't just my knowledge of food that attracted him. It was how I treated every customer like family, how I knew every dish's story. We married despite his mother's objections. A waitress, she complained to anyone who would listen. My son could have married a doctor or lawyer. But Michael saw something in me she didn't. When he promoted me to manager of the original Golden Dragon, profits doubled within a year. It's her connection with the customers, the staff would say. She knows exactly what they want before they do. What they didn't know was that I was slowly, carefully introducing my grandfather's recipes, a special sauce here, a modified cooking technique there, small changes that made huge differences. The restaurant's reputation soared. Food critics returned, writing about the revival of a San Francisco legend. Other locations in the chain started asking for our recipes. That's when Margaret's attitude changed, but not in the way I'd hoped. We need to standardize, she announced at a family dinner. All locations should have the same menu, same recipes. The original Golden Dragon will adapt to the chain standards. But our customers come for the authentic dishes, I protested. The traditional recipes are outdated, she cut in. We're modernizing, streamlining. And you, she smiled coldly, will step down as manager. We need someone with real business experience. Michael started to object, but I squeezed his hand under the table. Sometimes silence is more powerful than argument. The next day, Margaret installed her nephew, Peter, as the new manager. His first act was to demand all my recipes and cooking notes. Company property, he said with a smirk. I handed over a stack of papers, standard recipes, nothing special. The real treasure, my grandfather's notebook, was safely hidden away. Over the next 3 months, I watched as they systematically destroyed everything that made the original Golden Dragon special. Fresh ingredients were replaced with frozen. Traditional cooking methods were abandoned for faster, cheaper techniques. The soul of the restaurant was being stripped away. The customers noticed. Regular patrons stopped coming. Reviews turned negative. But Margaret was too focused on her standardization plan to see the damage. Then came the announcement. Golden Dragon was going public. Margaret had arranged for a major restaurant conglomerate to buy a controlling interest. We'll be nationwide within 5 years, she boasted at the board meeting. Hundreds of locations, all perfectly standardized. The other board members applauded. Only Michael looked troubled. And to ensure smooth transition, Margaret continued, looking directly at me. We'll be removing all unprofessional elements from management, starting with our former waitress. I stood up calmly. Of course, I understand. You'll sign an agreement naturally. Non-compete, Non-disclosure. Standard terms. I smiled, thinking of my grandfather's notebook, of all the secrets it contained. Of course. Later that night, Michael found me in our home kitchen cooking. "I'm sorry," he said. "Mom's wrong about this. About you." I stirred the sauce I was making, my grandfather's famous dragon sauce. The one that had launched the original Golden Dragon to fame. "Your mother thinks she owns the heart of Golden Dragon," I said quietly, "but she only owns the name." "What are you going to do?" I tasted the sauce. Perfect, just like my grandfather had taught me. "Tomorrow," I said, "we're going to learn the difference between owning a restaurant chain and owning what makes it special." Michael looked at the sauce, then at me, understanding dawning in his eyes. "The real recipes," he whispered. "You have them." I nodded. "And tomorrow, when your mother signs that deal with the conglomerate, she's going to learn exactly what she's really buying." The sauce simmered, filling the kitchen with its legendary aroma. Somewhere, I imagined my grandfather smiling. Tomorrow would change everything. Not just for me, but for the true legacy of Golden Dragon. The day of the Golden Dragon's public acquisition started with an unexpected phone call. David Chang, the food critic who had first made the restaurant famous 30 years ago, wanted to meet. "I heard about the sale," he said, "and about the changes they're making to the original location. Please tell me you saved your grandfather's recipes." We met at his favorite dim sum place, far from any Golden Dragon location. I brought a small container of sauce. David's eyes widened at the first taste. "It's exactly the same," he whispered. "James Chen's dragon sauce." They said it died with him. "Nothing dies if you pass it on with love," I said, quoting my grandfather. His article was published online an hour before the Golden Dragon's acquisition ceremony. "The Soul of Golden Dragon. A Legacy in Peril." It went viral in the food community. I arrived at the ceremony just as Margaret was preparing to sign the final papers. The hotel ballroom was packed with executives, investors, and press. "Today marks a new chapter," Margaret announced from the podium. "Golden Dragon will become a national brand, bringing our authentic Chinese cuisine to every corner of America." I waited until she lifted the pen to sign. "Actually," I said, standing up, "we should discuss what you're really selling." Margaret's pen froze. "Security." "Before you call security," I continued calmly, "you might want to read David Chang's article. It's trending on all the food sites." Someone pulled it up on their phone. The article spread through the crowd like wildfire, phones pinging everywhere. "The famous dragon sauce," I continued as Margaret's face paled. "The special dumplings, the seafood preparations that made Golden Dragon famous, none of those belong to the company. They never did." "That's ridiculous," Margaret snapped. "All recipes developed at Golden Dragon are company property." I pulled out my grandfather's notebook. "These recipes were created by Chef James Chen long before Golden Dragon existed. He passed them to me, his granddaughter and chosen successor. I've never shared them with the company. I just used them as his heir." The conglomerate's CEO leaned forward. "Is this true?" "Check your due diligence," I suggested. "You'll find no documentation of the original recipes in company records, because they're not company property. They're my family's legacy." Chaos erupted. Lawyers huddled in corners. The CEO demanded an emergency meeting. Margaret looked like she'd swallowed one of her frozen dumplings. I wasn't done. "I'm opening a new restaurant," I announced to the stunned crowd. "Chen's Kitchen. Using all my grandfather's original recipes, plus new ones I've developed, and I've invited all of Golden Dragon's original staff to join me." "You signed a non-compete," Margaret sputtered. Actually, Michael stepped forward, legal papers in hand. "She never signed anything. You were too busy rushing the acquisition to finish the paperwork." The conglomerate's CEO looked physically pained. "Without the original recipes, Golden Dragon is just another chain restaurant," I finished. "With frozen dumplings and standardized sauces, worth maybe a tenth of what you were about to pay." The acquisition collapsed within hours. Golden Dragon's stock price plummeted. Margaret's standardization dream crumbled as investors fled. But I wasn't interested in destruction. I had a restaurant to build. Ken's Kitchen opened 3 months later in the heart of Chinatown, just 2 blocks from the original Golden Dragon. The line on opening day stretched around the block. David Chang's review said it all. "The soul of Golden Dragon lives on, reborn in a new body but carrying the same spirit that made us fall in love 30 years ago." We did things differently. Every chef was trained personally in my grandfather's techniques. Every sauce was made fresh daily. Every customer was treated like family. Michael joined me, leaving his mother's crumbling empire to help build something authentic. I finally understand, he told me. It was never about the number of locations. It was about putting love into every dish. The success was beyond anything Margaret had imagined. Within 2 years, we had 5 locations, not hundreds, but each one special, each one maintaining the highest standards. Celebrity chefs begged for apprenticeships. Food critics called us the most authentic Chinese restaurant chain in America. Margaret tried everything to compete. She hired famous chefs, imported expensive ingredients, even attempted to recreate my grandfather's recipes. Nothing worked. Without the soul, it was just expensive food. Eventually, she came to Chen's kitchen as a customer. I seated her myself. "I don't want your forgiveness," she said stiffly. "I'm not offering it," I replied. "I'm offering you dinner, the way my grandfather would have made it." She cried at the first taste of dragon sauce. "It's exactly like I remember," she whispered, "from the very beginning." Today, Chen's kitchen is renowned not just for its food, but for its philosophy. We grow slowly, train thoroughly, and never compromise on quality. Each location has its own character while maintaining the core traditions my grandfather established. The original notebook sits in a glass case in our flagship restaurant, open to my grandfather's dragon sauce recipe. Next to it is a newer notebook, my own recipes and techniques, developed over years of cooking with love. Margaret still comes in occasionally, always sitting at the same corner table. She's learned to appreciate what she once dismissed, the value of tradition, the importance of soul in cooking. Last week, she brought her granddaughter, who wants to be a chef. "Would you consider teaching her?" Margaret asked quietly. "The real way, like your grandfather taught you?" I looked at the young girl's eager face and remembered my own lessons in that tiny apartment kitchen. "Recipes are like children," I said, quoting my grandfather once again. "They need love to grow." The girl starts her apprenticeship next month. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying what others build. It's about building something better yourself. My grandfather understood that. He didn't just leave me recipes, he left me a philosophy about food, about business, about life. Success isn't measured in numbers of locations or size of profits. It's measured in the smiles of satisfied customers, in the pride of well-trained chefs, in the preservation of traditions that deserve to live on. As I write this from my office above Chen's kitchen, I can smell the dragon sauce simmering below. The same sauce that launched a legacy, that taught a lesson about the true value of tradition. Margaret learned that you can own a restaurant chain without owning its soul. I learned that sometimes the best response to dismissal isn't argument, it's excellence. And somewhere, I know my grandfather is smiling, watching his recipes continue to change lives, one dish at a time.